The scale tool in Ibex provides an interface for precisely scaling objects in the drawing. I can open the scale tool by either selecting it from the home ribbon or selecting the F3 shortcut. There are three main parameters in the scaling interface: the scale factor, the size of the object, and proportional lock. If I select the icon in the upper left of my drawing here, I see that the scale factor remains at 1 for all axes, and then the size is populated with the size of my selection, and I have proportional lock on right now. So if I adjust the scale factor of the x-axis to 1.5, the x, y, and z-axes all update to be 1.5, and I see in my drawing that I get an equally scaled object up to 1.5 times its current size. Right-click to deselect that object and select this object now, and uncheck proportional. Now if I scale the x-axis, you can see that the object will only be scaled in the x direction and that y and z remain the same because I disabled proportional scaling. All of this works the same way if I decide to modify the size of the object. So for now, I'm going to re-enable proportional and change the x size to 20. And you can see that the rest of the size is scaled to get an even scaling. The scale factor is calculated at 1.363 roughly, and the preview is drawn to match that. I can right-click to cancel out of those changes, disable proportional, and do the same thing again. Change the x dimension to 20, and now I get an asymmetrical scaling where only the x scale factor is 1.36, and the y and z scale factors are set at 1 still. I can select the object in the lower left. All of this can also be done interactively. So if I left-click in the workplace, this sets the point that I'm going to scale about. And then click again, this sets the scale, and you'll see what I mean when I move the mouse. As I extend away from the second point, I get a positive scale. And as I move towards the anchor, I get a negative scale. And I can play with this if I set the anchor over here. You see that I'm scaling about the anchor point. Now, if I don't want to scale about the anchor point, I can override that. So if I select this object in the lower right here, I can enable scale by corner. And that's what the placement dropdown is for. In this case, I'm going to leave placement set to be the center. So if I do the same thing again, and I'm going to set the anchor point far to the right of the object I have selected, it's still going to scale about the center of the selected object. So this is a good way if I know I want to scale about the center or one of the corner points of the object, set scale by corner, and then I don't have to worry about where I'm clicking to set the scale to do it interactively. Now finally, an interesting mode is this group option that I've left on this entire time. If I select all 4 objects in my workspace, I can interactively scale them. And in this case, I have scale by corner selected, so all 4 objects are scaling about the center of the selection, which might be what I want, but not always. And so if I disable the group, what this does is it treats each object individually when it's scaling. So now if I click to set my scaling interactively again, now when I move to scale interactively, each object is scaled about its own center and remains in its original position. And so now when I set the scaling, the objects remain in their original positioning. The same thing can be achieved by editing the parameters in the interface. Finally, there's the copy option. If I enable that, anytime that I scale, see in this case, if I do this scaling again, copies are created when I finalize the scaling, and that works in any copy mode. Now I can right-click to deselect, right-click one more time to exit the tool. That's it for the scaling tool in Ibex.